Muhurmuhu Namashri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. So today's last revered Maharaj, revered Swami Atmagyananji Maharaj, revered Swami Bhaswatananji Maharaj, and other devotees. So we have come to the last session, and after having discussed Upāsanā, which means how to read or how to manifest more and more spirit in our daily lives, daily material lives. That is the central theme. And how we can do it through synthesis of the 4 yogas. As you all know, this idea of synthesis of 4 yogas was emphasized by Swami Vivekananda in the introduction to the Raj Yoga, where the emblem that he designed, he asked one Dutch devotee who wanted some kind of monogram. He was planning to print a pamphlet announcing all the different themes on which Swami Vivekananda would be speaking. Then he said, why don't we have an emblem, which monogram? Okay, that is the emblem, yes. Monogram. So, this happened in New York, and he asked him, so he was naturally asking him, we should have some kind of emblem or monogram which we can print in these pamphlets. So then immediately Swamiji took a envelope, some envelope, and on that he drew a rough monogram and just gave it to the artist. He was an artist, the Dutch artist. So I asked him, draw it to scale. So that was how the emblem came into existence. Of course, Swamiji explained to him the different aspects of this emblem, which represent harmony of all the 4 yogas. If you remember in the introduction to Raj Yoga, he writes, it is published there, that each soul is potentially divine and the goal is to manifest this divinity within. And he says, do it either by work, by worship, by psychic control, by devotion, by one or many, or all of these, and be free. That is the goal of life. So, the 4 yogas, actually, if you see from the psychological point of view, they represent the 4 faculties of the human mind. So there is a psychological basis to these 4 yogas. But before that, the word yoga itself has slightly different meanings. It can be, in Vedanta, if you say it is a union, it is some kind of union of Jivatman and the Paramatma, which is represented by the Paramhamsa here, the Hamsa, the swan. And you do it through the 4 yogas. The serpent, encircling serpent, stands for the Kundalini power. Though the Kundalini that we discussed today morning has nothing to do with the movement of a serpent or anything like that. It's just a symbolic representation of the psychic power known as Kundalini, which is aroused when we do sadhana or upasana, and the potential psychic energy goes up the hollow of the spinal column. Mind you, it is the psychic energy is flowing through the efferent and afferent nerves, Ida and Pingala, which you can physiologically identify. If you take a cross section, Swami Shardananji again mentions this, that there's a hollow, there's an 8 shape of 8. If you cut through the spine, a cross section of the spinal cord, then you will find there is a hollow. Of course, there is the cerebrospinal fluid in that. And the only purpose physiologists or medical fraternity say that it just helps as a shock absorber and sometimes for anesthesia. And they don't give anesthesia to the spine directly, but they give it to the cerebrospinal fluid. So that is the anatomical part of it. But somewhere between the two nerves, two parallel nerves, is this hollow. And Swamiji in his Raj Yoga says the goal is to somehow make this psychic energy pass through the hollow rather than through these two efferent and efferent, Ida and Pingala. So that is the goal of Kundalini Yoga, the Tantras. But Swamiji somehow has synthesized it or introduced it in his Raj Yoga, and Patanjali's Yoga, which normally doesn't deal with this aspect, he has very nicely synthesized it, and he has synthesized other things in his major book which he wrote, the only book which he dictated. The other 3 yogas were a compilation of his different lectures. For example, the Jnana Yoga lectures, they were mostly delivered in London, a series of lectures on different themes, and a few in America, and Bhakti Yoga and other Karma Yoga, of course, they were class talks and lectures which have been arranged in a particular way. And thus we have the other 3 yogas. But Raj Yoga was a book which he dictated and meditated. In fact, every verse of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, all the 4 adhyayas, he meditated on them. And sometimes Miss Waldo had to dip her pen into the ink pot and wait for an utterance of Swamiji and note it down whenever he gave an inspired explanation based on his own experience of the different sutras. So it's a wonderful commentary. Of course, he seems to have consulted Vyasa's commentary and also Bhoja Vritti, which were extant at that time. So naturally he studied it, but at the same time his interpretations, and especially the wonderful introduction that he wrote, that gives the gist of Raj Yoga, where he has synthesized so many things. For example, there is an exclusive chapter on prana, which obviously it's a Vedantic concept. It appears, it occurs in the Upanishads so frequently, the idea of prana. So there is an elaborate, very big discussion on the prana itself, what this prana is. Patanjali has, of course, in his sutras mentioned all these things, but the introduction to Raj Yoga makes it a unique book. It's not just a translation of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. But in any case, Raj Yoga is slightly different from the other yogas, whereas in the other yogas, the idea is to yuj dhatu. Yuj is the root of the word yoga. And Swamiji mentions that also, that it's an attempt through various disciplines, or rather various faculties of the human mind, human personality, to unite the Jivatma with the Paramatma. So from the English word yoke, to yoke a bullock to the bullock cart. So we yoke it. So that is the idea, that yoga, yuj has the same root as the English yoke. So you are joining somehow in some manner through Upāsanā or sadhana, you are trying to unite the Jivatma and the Paramatma. So that is as far as the 3 yogas. But Patanjali's yoga, of course, Raj Yoga is Swami Vivekananda's own interpretation. It is an original work. But there, strictly speaking, the word yoga, it in fact implies that the two entities, Purusha and Prakriti. It is the Viyog or the disassociation of Purusha and Prakriti. Somehow they get mixed up. And the goal of Patanjali's yoga is to separate them. The end of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Vyasa gives a beautiful commentary. The role that Prakriti plays in this whole drama of life. How Prakriti, like a loving mother, she is the one who binds us through the gunas and takes the soul, the Purusha, the soul through all these experiences, like a mother taking the child through a big fair, Mela as they call it in India. So the child is taken, all different experiences are enjoyed by the child, but when the child is tired, like a loving mother, she takes the child back home, that is to the original source, that is Purusha. That's the role of Prakriti plays in Patanjali's yoga. So it's, in fact, you try to separate this mixture which causes problems, this union between Purusha and Prakriti has to be somehow, Purusha and Prakriti have to be separated, and the Purusha side shines in its own light. So that is a minor difference. But otherwise, all the yogas have one goal, that is the union of Jivatma with the Paramatma. So the individual self unites with the Supreme Self as indicated here, and we do it through different yogas. The encircling serpent is representative of Raj Yoga. The wavy waters of the sea, which is drawn here, they represent Karma Yoga, the actions that we do. And the lotus represents Bhakti, that's symbolic of Bhakti, that's symbol used for Bhakti Yoga. And then the sun represents Jnana, the sun of knowledge. So by using all these four yogas, the goal of the individual soul is to unite with the universal or the Supreme Self. The individual self merges with the Supreme Self. That is the goal of all the four yogas. So that is what Swami Vivekananda wanted. All the followers, he says, Sri Ramakrishna's personality was all-sided. He was not one-sided. People think he emphasized bhakti in this Kali Yuga, but he was an adept in all the yogas. In fact, Swamiji says, nowhere can you find such an all-rounded personality. All the sides of Sri Ramakrishna, different four aspects, were equally developed. And that is what all of us, the followers of Sri Ramakrishna should do. Try to manifest or try to practice all the four yogas individually or as a synthetic whole. So synthesis is the word that he used. So how do we synthesize these four yogas in our daily life? As I said earlier, it has a psychological basis. If you see Western psychology especially, they identify three powers of the mind. Three faculties rather of the mind. The power to think, the power to feel, cognition, emotion, and the power to will. There's another faculty of the mind which enables one to carry out ideas, ideals, and our thoughts, convert them into concrete action by the force of will, by the power of will. So Karma Yoga is a result, the actions that we do based on our thoughts converted into action by the force of will. So when we try to control or try to try to unite the individual self with the Supreme Self through actions, we are predominantly using the force or the power of will, which is again a faculty of our mind. When we are using cognition, when we are using vichara, when we distinguish between real and unreal, or Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka. This is a wonderful topic actually, and has been sometimes we get an idea. Yesterday we were discussing the gospel. In Bangla it is known as Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. So what is Anitya? Is it an illusion? If it is an illusion, it gets a wrong idea. Illusion may be a wrong idea, as Maharaj said yesterday. It's better to translate it as changing. Anitya means that which is not permanent, not eternal, non-eternal. That would be a better word. So Sri Ramakrishna, in his teachings as well as in his own life, used to emphasize all these four yogas. But coming to the psychological aspects of the human mind, we all recognize that one has the capacity to think. So, effecting a union of this Jivatma with the Paramatma through the path of knowledge, or using our cognitive powers to distinguish between what is real, using some methods which are very popular in the Upanishads, neti, neti, not this, not this. Anything that is temporary, you just reject it. Anything that doesn't have eternal value, you just reject it. That is how viveka or discrimination develops in a sadhaka. Shankaracharya in fact wrote the entire Vivek Chudamani based on this. How to distinguish or how to do this viveka of nitya and anitya in our life. Every moment we encounter this. We mistake the anitya to be nitya, and we cannot discriminate between the two. So we have to use our reasoning, the capacity, the power to reason, the rational capacity, our cognition to separate these two things and then reach the goal. That is one way. There is another way. We have what is known as emotion. Very often these emotions are misplaced emotions. We place them on non-eternal, anitya things, and that's why we suffer. All the human emotions, all the lower emotions, we suffer because we have placed those emotions, or we have directed those emotions on things that are not going to sustain themselves. They are going to perish. They are anitya vastu, vastu viveka. So we put all our emotions, direct all our emotions, and we have a attachment, raga, towards these temporary things. And bhakti enables you to direct that very same emotion or set of emotions, and direct it towards something that is eternal within us. That is the whole gist of bhakti yoga. So we are using the same capacity that binds us, the same emotion that causes a lot of psychological problems in our day-to-day lives, and directing it towards God, the eternal reality, the eternal Ishta within us, so that those emotions are channelized in a proper way and it becomes bhakti. So that is another yoga, trying to unite the Jivatma with the Paramatma through our emotions, through a properly directed emotional life, by slowly taking it away from ephemeral things which are known as anitya, which are temporary, and slowly focusing them one by one. So it's not outright rejection like neti neti. You just have to reject everything outright, anything that changes. Here, you are just changing the focus. As Sri Ramakrishna very often advises the disciples that they are so attached to their relatives, to their children, grandchildren, things of the world. So he doesn't condemn that. He says, "Mod firiye thou." Just change the direction, that's all. Who asked you to give up emotions? So that's a unique psychological concept which Sri Ramakrishna emphasized. All you have to do is just change the direction. Misdirected emotion will lead to suffering, and when you direct it to God, the eternal reality, that's why I quoted Prahlada. The best definition in Bhakti Yoga Swami Vivekananda says that the highest prayer, there are many definitions of bhakti. He quotes other Shandilya, he quotes Narada, but according to Swamiji, the best definition is what Sri Ramakrishna emphasizes as a practical solution to direct the wrongly directed emotions in the right direction, channelize it towards God. So Prahlada prays that the love that an ignorant man has for the senses and the sense objects, mainly, the love that he has for the sense objects, oh my Lord, let me have that same love for you. So Sri Ramakrishna also used to say, the combined love of a chaste woman's love for her husband, the mother's love for the child, and a miser's love for his money. You see how practical Sri Ramakrishna was. He saw these are the main attractions, or these are the main objects that attract a human mind. Mother's love towards the child, such a difficult emotion to get rid of. How many of us can do that? He knew it is so difficult, and especially for a miser to get rid of his attachment to money. That's why the Bible, Jesus says, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. He was so harsh. Then we realize how difficult it is for people. He tells him, somebody wanted to join Jesus. He said, sell whatever thou hast and distribute that wealth to the poor, and then you follow me. And that poor fellow was so much attached to his riches, he could not come. So Jesus points out, he says, see, he loves his money so much. Then he says this, that it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of spirit within. So these three things, Sri Ramakrishna used all the three things. A miser's love for his money, a chaste wife's love for her husband, and a devoted mother's love to her child. If you combine, each one is not enough. If you combine the attachment of these three things and direct it towards God, then you can have bhakti or bhakti yoga. So Sri Ramakrishna used to emphasize this, and this was part of his day-to-day conversation. Then we come to the next faculty, which I said is karma yoga. We began with that everyone has a will, and that will makes us work. Whatever great things that have happened, in Raj Yoga Swamiji says, all the great things that have happened, all the great material revolutions and the discoveries, scientific discoveries, technological marvels, they are nothing but the manifestation of the will of man. It's because he wants to act, he wants to convert ideas into concrete action. And we have that faculty in us to convert thoughts into concrete actions. So everybody is forced to act. The three gunas, as Krishna tells in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna wants to renounce work. He says your gunas will force you to work. The preponderance of Rajo Guna which you have to be sattvic to slowly give up this work. So Karma Yoga means directing the karma, the willpower that is one of the faculties of the human mind in a proper direction so that this karma frees you rather than binds you. All this emotion, thinking, cognition and the willpower that we have. If it is in the opposite direction, it can take us towards matter or make us material, make us worldly. But if it is direction is changed, as we discussed in the morning, Paranchi khani vyatrunat swayambhu tasmat parang. We always see. We use these powers to develop ourselves in the world outside. But spirituality or yoga, in this case, trains you to use the same forces, the same thinking capacity, rational capacity, the same emotional faculty of the mind, and you just change its direction. And when it is turned towards the Supreme Self within, which is hidden, as Upanishad says, it is hidden. For most of us, we do not, unless we do sadhana or upasana, and it requires a dhira to do that. Kaschit dhira, pratyagatmanam aikshat. He sees this pratyagatman, tries to see it, avrutta chakshu, by closing his senses, doing pratyahara, not allowing the senses to go towards their respective object. So the same thing applies in this yogas also. Not allowing the thoughts, the thinking capacity to be wasted in making us extroverted or making us an extrovert, and trying to use that same power by changing its direction and directing it towards God. That is what I referred to when Thakur in his Bangla, he says in the Kathamrut, Mod Firiyada. All you have to do is change the direction. And you see the same energies, the same faculty, the same mind. It only requires a change in priorities, a change in direction, and bhoga becomes yoga. That is how Swamiji has defined it. But there is one more faculty. Now these are the three faculties. There is another faculty of the human mind, which Western psychology identifies these basic faculties: thinking, feeling, and willing. But what about the fourth faculty, which is the power to restrain thoughts, which generates a tremendous amount of energy or force, which is Raj Yoga. Swamiji used to compare it with a flying bird. So one of the wings of the bird, when a bird flies, if one wing is the capacity to think, jnana, the other wing is bhakti, the power of emotion. It's the power of Raj Yoga which gives it a proper direction. So and the example is also given that if you construct a dam across a river, when you restrain the flow of thoughts, it has a capacity, its a potential increases, and that energy is useful when you practice yoga. You channelize that energy that is generated as a power. It can be said just as power of thinking, power of feeling, and the power of exercising your will. We have a power to stop these thoughts, this restless mind, the flow of thoughts, endless flow of thoughts that divert our energy or waste our energy. When we focus it, this yoga helps us, Raj Yoga, it's not technically Raj Yoga means something else. But Swamiji used Raj Yoga in the sense, he said, he in fact referred to psychology as the king of all sciences. This Raj Yoga, the power to control thoughts and use the energy that we get by this focus or by this concentration, this one pratyaya which we hold on to, one vritti which we hold on to. Ultimately, it generates tremendous power, and it is used for all the three yogas. That power of concentration, that power of that one-pointed attention, that meditative awareness, if you analyze properly, it is required for karma yoga, it is required for jnana yoga, to hold on to this nitya vastu viveka. Always to hold on to that. Hold on to the ishta. Direct the emotion. When it changes direction, bring it back. That requires a tremendous control of the mind, of the thoughts that arise. And many of these thoughts rise from the karana sharira. As I told you, we have three shariras, and very often we do not know where these thoughts bubble from. We do not know its source. They are the hidden impressions of several lives, not just one life. several lives, these habits have become, as Swamiji says, our life is nothing but habits. Karma Yoga, he says, so beautifully. He says it is our habits that have made us what we are. So to cultivate a meditative habit and use that to counter the old habits which have become natural with us. That is the goal of Raj Yoga, to go into the unconscious or the subconscious mind, the Karana Sharira, where these hidden thoughts, these tendencies, inherent tendencies, which are known as samskaras, in some seed form they are lying there. So this Upāsanā, this meditation, helps us to destroy that, to counter those thoughts. Patanjali uses the word Pratipaksha Bhavana. So any thought that disturbs, you produce a counter thought. So in fact, if we see, he analyzes all our thoughts, how to deal with our thoughts, how to do Chitta Vritti Nirodha. That is the second sutra. Yoga, very definition of yoga, that is Patanjali's yoga, is Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So how to do that? The vrittis keep on coming. We do not know the source. So he classifies all our disturbing thoughts into 5 basic, not thoughts, they are known as kleshas. Either the thought will be raga, attachment to the things that we like. Raga, that is, we like certain things. We have so many strong likes and dislikes in our life. And that is a result of wrong habits. We don't accept things as they are. The quality of santosha which we mentioned in the morning. We are not satisfied with what we get effortlessly. We run after things that we like. Dvesha, we avoid or hate things that we don't like. And the strong likes and dislikes, plus 3 more kleshas. Kleshas are pain-bearing obstructions to this meditation. Patanjali says you identify them, you can classify all your thoughts, and then use a process known as Pratipaksha Bhavana to convert raga and try to counter it. See, if you are inordinately attached to something, you try to counter it. If you inordinately hate something, that is, have dvesha for something, they are not conducive to control your mind. Then there is abhinivesha, clinging to life, which is a major problem for all of us. Clinging to life, abhinivesha, fear of death. Every jiva clings to life. It's a very natural tendency. So that clinging to the body, the clinging to life, is also one of the painful obstructions. Then there is asmita and avidya, the basic ignorance because of which we have raga, dvesha. So strong likes and dislikes, through yama and niyama, we have to counter them. That is how Raj Yoga works. These strong likes and dislikes which we have, and of course fear of death, these 3 things are the main obstructions. All the problems that we face, which does not permit us to hold on to noble thoughts. This Chitta Vritti Nirodha we cannot do because these thoughts keep on propping up from the unconscious or the Karana Sharira because of our wrong habits. So to have these counter habits, it's a very long process, and meditation or Chitta Vritti Nirodha, we go on countering these things, trying to destroy the kleshas, these kleshas which when they are attached to our thoughts by themselves are not harmful, but when one of these kleshas, raga, attaches to an image, a form that we see, when we like that form, that is when the problem starts. If we are looking at it as a witness, Swamiji says, if you look at the painting and or a movie and don't get attached or get involved in that, don't identify with that, then it is not a problem. But the moment these kleshas, you see something, you immediately like it or you hate it. And then your samskaras, these samskaras are formed, good or bad. So you have to counter. Patanjali is a very laborious way of handling these thoughts, trying to identify, try to destroy the kleshas or at least reduce its intensity so that you can use the meditation for generating energy, for revealing, for removing avidya and asmita, the ego. So all these things, these yogas, you will find, as Swamiji mentions in all the yogas, he says, this negation of the small self, this asmita or ego, is the self-abnegation, is the underlying principle behind all yogas. In that there is no doubt, they all can be synthesized. One purpose that all yogas serve is to somehow get rid of the ego, to negate your smaller self and try to merge it with the higher self. That's the goal, common goal of all the yogas. So naturally we can synthesize all the things that we do, that these 4 yogas, using all the 4 faculties of the mind. And when we do it together in a very synthetic, in a very harmonious way, as Sri Ramakrishna's first advice or second advice he gave to Master Mahasaya. In fact, all his advice, if you see in the gospel, he always speaks of all the 4 yogas. When somebody asks him, maybe once or twice he may say that it is good to, in this Kali Yuga, you should do bhakti. But very often you will find him emphasizing this harmony of yoga. So when Master Mahasaya came to him, asking him what is the way, then he says, start with Nirjan Vas. So that aids Raj Yoga. So he's implying when you go to solitude, when you watch your thoughts, when you try to grapple with your mind, grapple with your vrittis. So that is why Nirjan Vas or solitude was emphasized in the beginning. That makes Raj Yoga a very important yoga. Swamiji also says, if you are busy all throughout your life, then there is in Raj Yoga he mentions that. Extremely busy life in the name of duty is not conducive to Raj Yoga. Thakur also very often used to warn many of his disciples, especially Master Mahasaya, who led a very busy and hectic life. He said, you have to now and then go to solitude. So solitude, without solitude, physical as well as mental solitude, you cannot do Raj Yoga. So he used to, in the beginning itself he says, you have to go into solitude now and then, if possible, for 3 days, or if not for a few weeks, or at least for 3 days, if not for 3 days, at least for 1 day at a time. Just try to practice some kind of solitude. So that enables you, that gives you some kind of time to watch your thoughts and reduce the thoughts. Practice chitta vritti nirodha to the extent you can, and at least not increase, not complicate things further by adding so many names and forms which give rise to more and more thoughts. So he begins spiritual sadhana with this. So it begins the whole harmony of yogas you can find in most of the advices that he gives to different devotees who come. He would often emphasize these 4 things. Each one represents one particular yoga. So once you go into solitude and do some kind of meditation, then he used to say the Jnana Yoga follows next. He used to say Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka. As I said, that Nitya, always focusing on the eternal things. What he used to say, will this breadwinning education, when he was asked, he always used to ask, will this help me to achieve the goal of my life? He was very clear in his priorities in life. And that was developed right from childhood. So he refused to undergo any kind of formal learning, because he knew that is not going to help him achieve the goal of life. So he knew what is eternal, the eternal thing. If he wants, he has to give up the non-eternal, anitya things. And this he developed right from childhood. You find this nitya anitya vastu viveka was an integral part of his personality. So Jnana Yoga, this through viveka, through discrimination, incisive discrimination, you try to find out what is permanent in our life and what is temporary, what is anitya, and then try to follow the eternal values, the eternal. So that is Jnana Yoga. Then he says, Ishwara Nam Guna Gan. So that very clearly implies bhakti. Nam Guna Gan. As I said, just repeating his name may not be there. We can repeat the name or remember the form, meditate on the form, but if it is not possible, at least Gunagan, that is, you do Guna Dhyana by singing various songs, hymns and other things which help you to develop devotion. So he gave a lot of importance to this abhyasa, this repeating of the holy name. And he knew the power of the divine name to infuse bhakti in one's personality. And he used to say you have to love, you have to develop some bhava. It's not enough to mechanically recite these mantras and do japa and recite these prayers. He used to say that you have to have some kind of relationship with God. He knew this love that human beings have, these different relationships they have with different human beings, like a mother to the child, a child to the mother, and so many other bhavas. These very human emotions can be converted if we develop a relationship, a particular relationship, and stick to it. Sri Ramakrishna is to emphasize this. That's one of the role of the gurus, to have a definite, to point out a definite bhava. If you see Shardananji and all, every time he just did not initiate them. He also told them to develop a particular bhava. Shanta bhava. Then there are so many wonderful bhavas in the Bhakti Shastra, where Sri Ramakrishna says it is not enough to just repeat his name and sing his glories. Along with that, you have developed a personal relationship, a human relationship, which will ultimately lead to a divine relationship. So that is how the essence of bhakti was included in his advice that he gave. And finally comes Vaishnava Seva, or service of the devotees of God. So that is a very important part in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's bhakti movement, that seva, the seva of the devotees of the Lord, is as good as serving the Lord himself. But he added a new dimension to that, which Swami Vivekananda was very quick to understand. When he said, why seva out of compassion? Why seva out of daya? But seva, trying to see Shiva Gyane Jiva Seva. It was uttered by Sri Ramakrishna in a very high state of mind. When some Vaishnavas emphasize this, it's a very wonderful sadhana, no doubt. Out of compassion, you serve the Vaishnavas, serve the jivas, suffering jiva. But Sri Ramakrishna added a new dimension. That is how he integrated this karma yoga. If you believe in a personal God, then you, or even if you don't believe, if you believe in God as the antaryami, as the Upanishads do, he is the antaryami, he is dwelling in all beings. So why not worship him? Worship the God in all human beings, in all the jivas. So this is how we integrated all the four yogas, and in the process, he did not leave out any faculty of the mind. So psychologically, you see how wonderfully he brings about, so naturally, effortlessly, through his simple advice. You will find this repeated again and again. In fact, Hriday got tired once. He said, Mama, you are repeating the same thing every day. If you don't change your topic, people will not come. Then Hridaya in his, Sri Ramakrishna in his typical slang, salami bar bar bolbo. Torki. If it is good, I will repeat 100 times. What is it to you? Because truth has to be repeated. Punaravritti has to be done. You can't change just to entertain people. That may be in other fields. You want variety. People get tired of repetition. But one thing I can tell you, in spirituality, the only possibility of success is through repetition. Whether it is Nam Japa, remembrance, everywhere you will find, because we have to create a new habit. And habits can be formed, good habits can be formed by repetition. So that is why everything is repeated, including Sri Ramakrishna's advice. He repeated the same thing. If you see, the situations have changed, the people have changed, but he would again and again repeat the same thing. There's nothing else in spiritual life. So he used to say, if this is the truth, then I'll repeat it 1,000 times. So the problem is not variety or the different advices that we like to hear, but the same thing, without creating monotony, to repeat, to start loving. That's why he used to add that element of love. He said, if you love God, then you'll do, if you do it mechanically, then it will become a repetition. Repeating the name, doing japa again and again, the same name. In fact, the secret of spiritual life is this repetition. But if it is done with love, that is, if we add an element of emotion or bhakti, then this repetition can lead to that can quicken the spiritual progress. And if you add the actions, again done with love, not grudgingly, not because it is a duty. So that's why Swamiji said, duty is like the scorching sun which has burnt humanity. In the name of duty, we do so many things. He didn't like the idea of duty as it is understood. There's no duty. In Karma Yoga is not doing one's duty out of compulsion. It has to be done out of love for God. So that converts the same work, which is interpreted by some as a monotonous duty, where we grumble all the time and do it as duty. But the same duty becomes a sadhana if we do it out of love, as a worship, act of worship of God, trying to see the Shiva in the Jiva. With that attitude, if we interact, then our same nature, the same yoga, karma becomes karma yoga. The bhakti, if it is directed towards God, the God in man again, then that bhakti, that divine whom you worship, that love that you have for human beings, if it is directed towards God, it becomes bhakti. So all these 4 yogas, you will find that it will help us to have a synthesis in a very, very natural way. So gospel is full of this harmony of 4 yogas. Though Swami Vivekananda emphasized, he could read that message, but it is there in the gospel, and Swami Vivekananda wanted all the faculties to be equally developed, if possible, in our individual lives, or if not, in a collective way. For example, in a monastery or in a house, somebody is predominantly devoted or somebody is predominantly active. So in unison, when the whole monastery, they can practice. That was one of Swamiji's ideas, that if you cannot do it as an individual, as an organization, a group of people, all doing different yogas, but at the same time having the same goal of mind, there's another kind of harmony we can find in our day-to-day life. So I think I've run out of time, so I'll conclude. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
This panel session, Swami Bhasananji and myself will do this afternoon session, and tomorrow Maharaj and Professor Dr. Jeffrey Long will do this one. Most of you know, we speak for a short period of time and then we open it up for questions. So this is a participation type of session. If there are questions specifically related to the topics, the talks you heard this morning, you can save them because there'll be a long question and answer session tomorrow with Swamiji and the others. But if you have any other questions related to what we talk about or general things, then we'll open it up for that. Do we have, you can write down the questions. If you know them ahead of time, you can do that, or as we're speaking, you can do it, and then we'll pass them up, and then we'll try to answer all of the questions. We may have to cancel this session.
At least now we have to take the hint. Namaskar. I'd like to just say a few words about the present topic, worship. A few general observations on worship as a spiritual discipline. The whole range that the spiritual discipline of worship covers is very wide. It begins from worshiping God with material objects and culminates in serving Him in all living beings. And included within this range, there is a special kind of worship, mental worship. It is actually a higher form of worship, and this mental worship is what is in Sanskrit called Upāsanā. It literally means to sit near, meaning to sit near the deity. In practice, it means contemplation or meditation on God. This kind of mental worship is the principal spiritual practice in Dvaita Vedanta. We must remember that Vedanta includes a couple of dualistic schools of thought also. And these systems, these dualistic systems, regard God and self as two separate entities. The worshipper tries to bring about the contact between these two in various degrees of intimacy. But the distinction between them is never entirely lost. That is why they are dualistic schools of thought. First, the aspirant remains as a seeker, and God is the object of his search. Next, he becomes the servant, and God is his master. Then he is the friend, and God his companion. Later, he becomes the mother, and God his child. And lastly, the devotee thinks of himself as the lover, and God is his beloved. And in highly advanced stages, the worshipper regards himself and all living beings as pure souls, and God as the soul of all souls. All these devotional attitudes progressively serve as stepping stones to the realization of non-duality. However, that is still far away from the vast majority of us aspirants. Most of us need some kind of symbol, worshipful symbol. Otherwise, our mind wanders. So, in order to make concentration easier, some sacred objects are selected. This kind of worship, in which an object is taken as a symbol, a representation of God, this is a very common practice. It is common among devotees who worship the personal God, and also common among seekers who contemplate the impersonal absolute. Both Dvaitis and Advaitis need the help of symbols. But here we need to keep in mind that worship is not of the symbol, but through the symbol. Since everything has emerged from God, any object can, in a way, become a symbol of God. But all religious traditions have held that certain symbols are especially sacred. It is as if there is a special manifestation of the divine in that symbol or object. For example, worship of the sun and fire was once widely prevalent all over the world. But we must try to see beyond mere sun and fire in our worship and try to find the eternal light itself, of which the sun and fire are merely symbols or representations. As I said, we must always bear in mind that these are only symbols and not God himself. At best, they can be thought of as manifestations of God. Now, enlightened souls don't need any symbols. They see the divine spirit inside and outside. They see God everywhere. And advanced souls don't care for outside symbols. They meditate on God as dwelling in their own hearts. But ordinary aspirants like us, who are not spiritually mature or developed enough, we can only begin our spiritual life by worshiping God with the help of an image. It is something, this image, this symbol on which the mind depends, it is something like a peg on which to hang our faith and devotion. In fact, there are a number of Sanskrit verses that mention different types of worship and different levels of progress in worship. According to one well-known tantric verse, worshipping an idol is the first step. Prathama pratima puja, japastotradi madhyama. Higher than that, higher than idol worship, is repetition of a holy name and singing of divine glories. Then, uttama manasi puja, silent contemplation of God, is even higher. But the best is to know that I am He. Soham bhavottamottama. Soham bhavottamottama. So these are the different stages of progress in worship. Certain aspirants practice, in addition to this, certain aspirants practice a special method of worship called ahamgrahopāsanā, with the aim of achieving the union of Atman with Brahman. Ahamgrahopāsanā. In this method, the worshipper identifies, not equates, but identifies himself with the object of worship and meditates on his own self. The object of worship may be any particular devata, any deity, or it could be the personal God, Ishvara or Saguna Brahman, or the impersonal absolute itself. That is the surprising thing. During the time of worship, the worshipper imagines that he and the object of worship are non-different. That is to say, that they are both one and the same. This kind of meditation on the identity, not similarity, but identity between the worshipper and the worship, this ultimately leads to the realization of the one without a second. So this is the special method of worship called ahamgrahopāsanā. But this method is not so easy. Without the right temperament, without proper qualifications, it is almost impossible to practice this kind of worship successfully. That is why the scriptures the scriptures recommend worship with the help of some appropriate symbol. To repeat, God is worshipped not as the symbol, but through the symbol. The aim is to see in the limited symbol the presence of the limitless spirit which transcends all names and forms. The symbol is only a substitute or a suggestion of the all-pervading divine. Now, the symbol could be internal, or, as is the usual case, external. When I say the symbol can be internal, what does it mean? What internal symbols can be imagined? In the Upanishad, in the Upanishads, we get this idea that the worshipper's mind or the worshipper's soul itself can be the symbol. Or externally, the symbol could be something like space, the sun, fire, or a sound symbol like Om. That is what we find in the Vedas and Upanishads. But those who find these symbols too abstract or too subtle can begin with the use of a concrete image, like we do. But always keeping in mind that the image is a symbol of God or the Supreme Spirit. But even if it represents, now I must say, the symbol has to be a symbol of God or Ishvara. It can't be a symbol of, if we meditate on a so-called minor deity, or there are people who meditate on angels, who meditate on saints. These are not, it is difficult to include this kind of meditation under Upāsanas because the object of Upāsanas is liberation. But liberation can be had only by worshipping God and God alone. By worshipping a demigod or an angel or a saint, the soul cannot attain to liberation. This is something we have to keep in mind. The idea is God is one, but his aspects are many. Because it is impossible for us to worship him in all his fullness and glory, we take up some aspect of the Lord, but even in order to approach him through any of his personal aspects, we do need the help of different symbols, mental, verbal, or material. The symbol is not the reality. It is only a means of remembering God through the association of ideas. As the verse that we just heard said, in the beginning of our spiritual life, we may take the help of material symbols, say a picture or an idol. As we progress, we may dispense with the material aid and make use of sound symbols to call up the same divine idea. Advancing further, we may do away with both material and sound symbols and proceed with purely mental worship on the plane of thought, silently and quietly. That is the Manasa Puja that we do. And even this, we can give up when at the very thought of the divine, we are able to lose our little individual self completely in the great universal self. But as it is now, our vision is limited, and all that we see is colored by this limitation. What we see is not light as it is, but only a reflection. And that too within a certain range. Our understanding is also circumscribed. We can't realize the ultimate reality directly. What we know, we can only know through the mind, through its images and ideas. So, we are bound to the domain of ideas and symbols, which of course point to the truth, but at the same time obscure the truth. Now, there are symbols and symbols. There are real ones and false ones. To give an example, the mirage looks like water, but it is a deceptive appearance which has nothing to do with water. But the wave is a true symbol of the ocean because it rises out of it, is in touch with it, and subsides into it. And like the ocean, it is also made up of the same substance, water. Then there are lower and higher symbols, gross symbols, and subtle symbols. Between the reality and its expression, a number of profound or mysterious psychological processes take place, and these are all deep mysteries that were discovered and understood by sages and saints. This was what Maharaj was touching upon in the last session. They have seen through all these intervening layers and penetrated deep into the very heart of reality. And they have left behind their footprints for less qualified aspirants like us to follow. If we make use of those symbols and divine forms, which have come down to us from the Vedic times to the present day, in our worship and meditation, we may realize God in some aspect or other. So this whole science of worship, Upāsanā, is quite a complex one. Every image and every symbol is very well conceived and thoroughly researched by the mystics. Every procedure, physical or mental, every little gesture is executed exactly according to instructions because everything is designed for spiritual unfoldment. Everything is oriented towards spiritual progress. But unfortunately, we people renounce rituals before we are spiritually advanced enough. It is very wrong. Just as renouncing image worship before having outgrown it is wrong. Worship is not an inferior discipline after all. For most of us, worship of some image, physical or mental, is absolutely necessary if we really wish to grow and not merely to theorize. Having said that, however, if we find that all our life we remain worshipping only images, even then there is something seriously wrong. We need to always check whether, as a result of our practice, we are making progress or not. External worship may be useful to us in the beginning, and some people are great ritualists and derive great joy from it. But we should not spend all our life just doing external worship. External worship should lead us to internal worship sooner or later. We don't have to persist in trying to see God outside. We can also try to, at some point, we must also try to seek Him who dwells eternally in our own hearts. So, to summarize all that we heard from revered Sarvasthananda ji in the last 3 sessions, The word worship in Vedanta means something slightly different from what we hear about it in other traditions. It means Upāsanā, mentally approaching God step by step until we become one with Him. Upāsanā means mystic worship. We begin with concrete images, then move on to mental images and the repetition of divine names, and finally realize the union of the individual self with the Supreme Spirit. Along the way, through a graded course of spiritual disciplines, our body consciousness and our ego are progressively reduced, and the potential divinity of our soul is made more and more manifest. So this is the function and purpose of Upāsanā. In this Godward journey, the soul passes through several stages, overcomes many obstacles, but finally it does reach perfection. Thank you.
I think we're all exhausted by now. We've had a lot of very deep thought, very helpful, wonderful things. But some of you know I have a love-hate relationship with philosophy. I'm very much attracted to it, and I see very much the limitations of it. And sometimes I breathe a sigh of relief when I can just set it aside completely. So I'm going to talk about prayer. When we look at the advice that Sri Ramakrishna gave, there's always a list of things. Maharaj made some reference to that. Probably the most common question he was asked was a very simple two-word question, Upaiki. What is the way? What are the means? How can we realize God? And he gives different answers at different times. The question must come up at least a dozen times, maybe more, I never counted. And we get a different series of answers. Sometimes 1, 2, 3, 4, there's flipped around a little bit. But most common answer, as far as I understand, is holy company. Second, I would say solitude. Third, prayer. Prayer. Now, prayer is nice because we don't have to go through all of these acrobatics, philosophical acrobatics. We can be very simple people. We don't have to ask too many questions. We don't have to know too much. We don't have to be afraid that we're going to do it wrong. We don't have to know any language other than our own language. It's a dialogue between ourselves and God as we understand God, which can be any possible way. There's no restriction, there's no limitation. We may not even believe in God, and we can still pray. Now, how can we do that? Sometimes, as Sri Ramakrishna was asked, how do I pray to a God I don't know anything about this God? He said, pray to reveal yourself to me so I know something about you. There's something called the atheist's prayer. Huh? Oh God, if you exist, please, oh God, if you exist, please save my soul if I have one. Yeah. So we can be very simple people and just open up our hearts. We don't have to have any other paraphernalia, nothing. And just openly have that dialogue. All it takes is sincerity, and anybody can do it. There's no restriction, there's no limitation, there's no adhikara. We don't have to pass any test for it. And for Sri Ramakrishna, this was really his main spiritual practice. If we really look at what he did when he's spending nights in the north of the temple in Dakshineshwar, calling on Mother, it's not that he's just sitting and doing a japa. He's pouring his heart out, is praying to Mother, reveal yourself to me. So it's mostly prayer. And this prayer has a tremendous power to transform us. Now, what is the main advantage to prayer? We can have intensity that we won't have in other spiritual practices because the mind will wander. You see, we sit for meditation, and we all know that we may have moments where something very deep inside is resonating, but it'll be fleeting. Prayer doesn't have to take a long time. It can be a very short type of thing, and we can have any conception of God. We pray to God in heaven, pray to God dwelling within us. It doesn't make any difference because there's a power to prayer. Now, we all have this question, are our prayers answered? Huh? What does Thakur say? Is the prayer answered? Does God hear our prayers? Shunbeni shunben. Absolutely yes. Now, how do we understand that? So the Vedantic position, of course, will be God dwells within our hearts. That this idea of God somewhere up in heaven, far away, then this doubt can come. Did God spend all of his time? How many people are praying at the same time? How do we understand all of that? But have some conception that God dwells within our hearts. The Vedantin, the Jnani will say that's the higher self. The devotee will say this is Antaryaman. This is God dwelling within. The inner guide, that source of joy, that source of love, dwelling within the heart. And everything we heard about is a relationship. This is so important. If we call on God the way a small child calls on its mother. I'm sure you've all seen this scene that a shopping mall or some very busy place, somehow the small child gets separated from the mother. And how the child is just crying his eyes out. Yeah, for the mother. If doesn't need to know anything special. It just needs to know the longing for a mother. So this is the great advantage of prayer. Now, another question that comes up is, what can we pray for? Now, we hear very often that we shouldn't pray for things. But this word prarthana, it means we have some intention. We're praying for something. It doesn't have to be a selfish type of prayer. In fact, the best type of prayer is the unselfish type of prayer, but we can pray for devotion. We can pray for the vision of God. Can we pray for material things? Okay. Occasionally, sometimes. You know, there was a conversation that took place between Dr. Sharkar and Sri Ramakrishna. There's Dr. Sharkar, those who read the gospel know about him, that he was a character. He had his own strong views on everything, but every once in a while he would say something that Thakur especially liked. So one time this question came, Thakur was saying, only pray to God for the very highest. And then this Dr. Sharkar says, but God is our own mother. We lie in the lap of mother. We can ask our mother for anything. And Thakur says, yes, yeah. So we have a little trick, many of the sadhus of our order, a little trick. Only pray to Thakur for the highest. Pray to Holy Mother for anything else. Yeah. That if we really have that feeling that God is our very own, then we can even force our demands. See, Thakur liked this idea. We find it in many Ram Prasad songs also, and this idea that the small child will keep tugging the mother, yeah, and even to get the inheritance ahead of time. That we can force our demands on God if we feel that intimacy, that type of relationship. So, praying for other people. Yeah, Maharaj was mentioning, Swamiji himself says, before we sit for meditation, it's very nice. This takes whatever selfish attitude is involved in spiritual practice and meditation, where we only think about ourselves. Of course, it's not bad. We're thinking about ourselves as trying to renounce everything and to lead a God-centered life. But this removes whatever little self-centeredness there might be. We were reading the other day the book on the life of Swami Prabhupada. And he makes a very nice point. He says, you pray for other people, you can even mention everybody's name. Even mention everybody's name. This somehow, it opens up the heart. Now, does it benefit the other person if we pray for other people? This is a question of faith. I know the Swami Swahananda, he used to tell the people that how do we help this person that we feel helpless? He said, pray for them. And we don't know this power of prayer. It may work that way. There's no way of knowing. But it definitely works with ourselves. It definitely opens up the heart. It definitely has the power to transform us. So prayer is something that everybody can do. It's a very simple thing. We don't have to have any formula. If we really want to get a blueprint for how to pray, Thakur himself tells us so many times. Now, why in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna does he make such a point to say, I used to pray to the Divine Mother, thus? And then he'll give the whole prayer. I prayed only for pure love. Mother, keep your dharma and everything. Just give me pure love. Why did he do all of that? So that we would learn from it. Otherwise, he has no special reason for us to want to know how he prayed. It's only for our benefit. But otherwise, whatever comes from the heart. This is the most important thing with prayer. Now, there's a way to expand prayer. So we do everything in a prayerful way. There's a very beautiful quotation from Swamiji. He says, even our spiritual practices should be done in a prayerful manner. Meditation is a sort of prayer, and prayer is meditation. See, we're meditating, but at the same time, it's communion with God. It's a calling on Mother. Mother, please, to see the sincerity within my heart. So a type of prayer. He says meditation is sort of prayer, and prayer is meditation, because it's all done with the hope and longing that we'll get the results of this, not selfish, in a selfish type of way, but mother is looking after a child, to have that type of feeling. Otherwise, mother is happy to let the child play. Thakur gives that example so many times. That when the child throws the toys away and says, no, I want to go to my mother, and calls out, then mother puts down everything and comes running. So if we can convert everything into a type of prayer, that all of our spiritual practices, our dealings with other people, then everything gets transformed. Swamiji said in one place, with every breath, you are praying in God. I am talking, that is a prayer. You are listening, that is a prayer. Is there ever any moment of yours, mental or physical, in which you do not participate in the divine energy? It is all a constant prayer. If you call only a set of words prayer, you make prayer superficial. Such prayers are not much good. They can scarcely bear any real fruit. So all of our spiritual practices, we were often asked, what does the mantra mean? What is the real significance of the mantra? We repeat it over and over again. It can be a prayer. Mother, reveal yourself to me, whatever our relationship is. Dakadao, dakadao. This is a very nice way of seeing how everything gets can changed into this beautiful attitude, prayerful attitude. So this is the one spiritual practice that we have that really doesn't involve too much of deep metaphysical thinking. Doesn't involve much or any of any ritual or any formulaic type of practice, just from the heart. And it's extremely, extremely efficacious. That if we can do it with sincerity, with great longing, that this, what Thakur calls a bakulata, this tremendous longing for God realization, the vision of God, it will tremendously grow through this practice of prayer. So I think I'll stop here, and now we can turn to the questions. Okay. This is an easy one. I'll do this one first. Evening is the right time for worship, but in this country, evening can be 5:30, it can be 8:30. This is because closer you are to the equator, the less change there is, of course. Is it still okay to pray in the evening, or should we just set up a time for evening prayer? Okay. So, yeah, this is exactly what I was saying, that the more we focus on sincerity, the less we focus on details, the better off we are. There's this prayer of Chaitanya Deva that in all of our Southern California centers, we all learned this prayer, the English translation. No times are set, no rites are needful for chanting of thy name. So vast is thy mercy. So if we like this idea that this Sandhyarati, it should be the time when the sun goes down, that we adjust it. See, at Belur Math, morning arati will be changed, say, every 6 months. But evening arati, every day it will be a little bit different because when it's exactly sunset, we don't have to bother with all of those things. It's very much secondary. If we can do it, and if we're trying to follow, to bring some order and everything, it's nice, of course. But we have to be practical people. We have to be practical, and the devotion and the sincerity is far more important than the details of exactly are we sitting at the right time or anything like that. Okay.
Transition from meditation on Saguna Brahman to meditation on Nirguna Brahman. There's two ways this question can be answered. First of all, it's a question of different mentality, different mindsets. Some minds are drawn to an anthropomorphic God, and some minds are naturally inclined to non-anthropomorphic, that is the formless. So there's no necessity for a transition. If I'm satisfied with my worship and worship of Saguna Brahman, I won't bother about making that transition. But what is set to happen in actual spiritual life is the more I approach God, the more God's the more God's true nature will become revealed. So, even if a person approaches God in an intensely personal way, because God is spirit, the closer I approach God, the more I will be able to perceive not only His true nature, but my true nature also. That is why you can see very great bhaktas will be absolutely bereft of body consciousness. That is an indication. They don't think about themselves as bodies. Like Sri Ramakrishna said, from a distance, the ocean looks blue, but when you enter the ocean and scoop up a handful of water, you see that it is colorless. Something like this happens.
I'll add one small thing, that many of us get the instructions that may strike us as the opposite of that. That first we try to feel this infinite ocean of consciousness, the Nirguna Brahman, and then feel that it can somehow congeal into the form of our Ishtadevata. Then when we meditate on the Ishtadevata, we have the feeling that this is one with that infinite ocean. So then both kind of get combined, but it goes the other way. So because our meditation is generally with form, as we've seen, that we need something to focus the mind on. Okay. How can we balance the duty to help others against our own needs? When have we given enough? This is a very, very good question without any very, it's not the type of answer that will work for everybody. It's a very personal type of thing. It really depends on how much we feel for other people, as opposed to how much we allow people to use us, or we do it out of guilt. It depends on so many things. Those who really have that love for other people, that really feel the pain of other people, and they devote all of their time, we think they're fools, devoting all of their time. For them, this is worship. For if they really do it with that spirit, for them, this can be really the almost the whole of their spiritual life and spiritual practice. But it's very rare to find people like that. We want to have a balance, of course. So it's a very practical type of thing. And sometimes we'll find that we're very happy to give up our meditation and our spiritual practice on the plea of helping somebody else. So we have to analyze the mind. Are we trying to get out of it? We really feel for the other person? Do we feel some pride in helping other people? Can we do it with real love and humility and sense of gratitude? The Swamiji's understanding, which he got from, of course, from Sri Ramakrishna, this idea that we should feel it a privilege to help other people. We should feel that grateful to them to allow us to serve. We shouldn't feel any pride at all. We should feel that we're the fortunate ones. That if we do it with that type of attitude, then that's also spiritual practice. But there should be balance. And then we have to be practical. And sometimes we just have to say that this is time that when I do my spiritual practice, and then allocate our time as best we can. Okay.
What is the importance of writing Ram's name in red repeatedly? Is it any better or the same? I didn't know about this, whether the color red makes any difference. But it is a good practice, red or blue or black or whatever it is. As many times as we use our bodies to remember God, any practices, the more the better. That's all I can say. But I don't think the color makes any difference.
How do you develop love for God? Okay, so this is a very important question. When I was growing up, I used to hear this all of the time. God is love, love God. And I think it doesn't mean anything to me. It just didn't resonate with me at all. My concept of God was not anything that how can God be love? Love is a human emotion. It didn't make sense to me. And then when I got to Vedanta, then of course things started to get clarified in my mind a little bit. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, he says to love an incarnation of God is the same as to love God. Now, to me, this is key. This is key. So now the question becomes, can I learn to love, for us, of course, Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother? And then the objection is, of course, that, well, we've never met them. Okay, we have the photographs and we have their words. Now, when we say that we love another person, how much do we know of that person other than seeing the form and hearing their words? We project so much onto other people, even the people that we love, that there's not that much difference between those that we've been thinking about and hearing about and reading about, hearing their words, seeing their photos and everything, that if we immerse ourselves in First of all, this Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. This is the greatest book that was ever written. We immerse ourselves in that. We read it over and over and over again. Some actual, genuine love will form for Sri Ramakrishna, for Holy Mother, for Swamiji, for Maharaj, all of these people. They become like our family members. They become nearest and dearest to us. We start to feel that they're real, and the more we meditate on them, the more we feel that they're living even now. That, I like this idea of Nitya Lila, that this divine play is going on constantly. That play that took place in Dakshineswar from 1881 to 1885, that's going on even now. You can say this is, Paglami. You can say this is just my own madness. But to really feel that, where is it taking place? Within the heart. But within the heart doesn't mean imagination. That we dive deep within, we get to that realm, that divine realm of cosmic mind, where this divine play, we can feel that it's going on. We can feel that Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, that they're alive, that they're living. That when I was talking about prayer, we can feel that they're hearing our prayer, they're watching us, Antaryamin. They're watching us. They become real to us. Our love for them becomes stronger in some ways than it does for actual people who are filled with flaws and everything and constantly changing, and one day they like us, one day they don't like us. Yeah? So this love of God, for me at least, has to be personalized in the form of the avatar. Now, for Sri Ramakrishna, personalized in the form of the Divine Mother. So for him, that was real, genuine love because she was so real to him. That wasn't imagination. He heard her voice and still saw her form and everything. That's above our pay grade. But this idea that if we want to love God, if we can love this human manifestation of God, that'll be the same thing, equally valid.
I try to see God in every person, and I love to see God in every person. However, as soon as I remember how many times he or she gave blows to me and many other persons, to see God in that person becomes difficult. How can I overcome this? As if it is easy to see God in good people. The thing is, just some time ago, there was a talk here where we heard that Swami Vivekananda he had a particular fondness for God the terrible. That is why he worshipped Kali in the real spirit. God is not only in the good. God is also in the bad, in the evil, in the terrible. If God is trying to teach me a lesson in the language that my soul understands, that is how he will teach. So, we can try to remember every time we get a blow, instead of thinking about the person, just try to remember that it is God striking you through that person. It can't be otherwise. God is only trying to teach us in the language we understand. The sooner we learn our lessons, the better. Because Swamiji said, God is God only when he is pleasant and nice and favorable, but ceases to be God when there is evil. That cannot be. That's a very childish idea of God. And when we have thoughts like this, it is also true We are not all white lilies. We get exactly what we deserve. No more, no less. It is God's world, and there is no injustice in God's world. We deserve this and we get this. We just accept it as prasad, that's all. I'm not saying it's easy. It is difficult. But seeing God in good people also is difficult. 5 or 6 days, I can bear with Maharaj. After that,
That's why I go away so often. Please say something about balancing being part of the lila that is playing our roles and giving up that which is not eternal. These are two different spiritual attitudes. They may be for two different types of people. They may be for the same person at different times. When we sit for meditation, we may want to get into that mood where we feel ourselves just to be the witness of everything, where every type of identification with anything other than the Atman is false. We may get into that type of mood, or we may like this idea of lila, or forming a relationship with God that involves taking on a different type of identity for ourselves, which is also false from the point of view of the jnani. It's all superimposition. But this is Thakur's beautiful, this one of the most brilliant ideas is this vidyamaya and avidyamaya. That this false identification that I have with my ordinary self, with this physical body, with all of my quirks and all of my bad qualities and good qualities, that keeps me in bondage. If I falsely identify with one of these spiritual attitudes. Now I'm saying false, but it's not false in that binding way, that it's still taking on a new type of identity, which is different from saying, I am the Atman, I am the witness of everything. Still I'm identifying with some different level of personality, but it will free me from the other one. This is that second thorn that removes the first thorn. So we shouldn't think that if we have to balance it. If we can get established in this lila, if I can feel that my real identity is I'm a servant of Sri Ramakrishna, I'm born to do whatever I can to spread his name and to devote my life to him, and that's my sense of identification, fine. I don't have to say that this is again false superimposition, that it's somehow harming this idea that I am the eternal witness. I understand that's also true, but Thakur says this ego comes back, it keeps coming back. So let it remain as the servant, let it remain as part of this lila that will free us from this other type of bondage. So we shouldn't get this idea that we have to balance it. If we like this other idea, sometimes I want to just feel that I'm the witness. Good. But if we don't like it, we shouldn't feel that we're missing out on something, that we're leading an unbalanced type of life, that there'll be many people. See, look at Swamiji. Swamiji, he if anybody was fully immersed in the highest type of wisdom, it was Swamiji. But at the same time, he couldn't get out of this idea, yes, I am the eternal servant of Sri Ramakrishna. What can I do? He didn't have to say, well, should I balance it with some other idea? For him, that was the greatest honor and privilege and lead to the highest type of realization. So a question of different types of individuals, different spiritual attitudes. Those who really like this idea that I'll simply remain as the witness, I won't falsely identify with anything, they can also realize the highest. It's difficult, but of course, this is the path of Jnana Yoga.
I always have this debate in mind. Should we risk our life for the sake of truth, or wait for the favorable time when there will be adequate power to fight for truth. First of all, nobody is risking their life for truth. Because it is, even when we have achieved a certain amount of conviction that in the end this life is unsubstantial, unless we have sufficient attraction for God, unless our soul has felt that God is real, it'll be impossible to risk our life, that we won't be able to do it. So it is either we have to be deeply convinced about the futility of life as we live it, with all its achievements and all. Unless we are 100% convinced about it, we won't have the energy to risk our all for God. So that is impossible. Yeah, or wait for the time when there will be adequate. The thing is, you can wait, but why are you here? Because something is turning inside. Maybe your soul is opening up more and more to spirituality, spiritual life. That is why we are here. If we can try to strengthen this, then instead of, we don't have to think of risking everything. We can just keep moving towards our spiritual ideal, and then the world will just fall behind. That's an easier way of looking at it. But the waiting, see, the thing is, mentally, at least intellectually, we are more or less convinced after reading and hearing and learning so much about Vedanta and spiritual life, at least at a superficial level. We are convinced about the reality of spiritual life. Let us not say God, reality of spiritual life. That this is more worthwhile. This is something which will not make us regret in the end. At least this much we know for certain. Let us work upon this. Let us work upon this. But instead of waiting for a favorable time, it is more profitable to intensify what we have gained and make use of our experiences to move forward. But if we wait also, even then, God has His own ways of, as I said, yeah, every now and then we get blows, and this Swamiji himself says, and he's commenting on those two birds of the Mundaka Upanishad. Every now and then, because we live in the world, every now and then we take a blow, and then comes a particularly hard blow that really shakes us up. And then we go back to sleep again. And then comes another blow. This is how it is in the world. That is why Ashokanandaji says, spiritual progress is an extremely slow progress. That is the truth of these things. So sometimes the blow is so hard that you won't wait. So God teaches us in different ways.
please expand on the difference of the 4 yogas of Swami Vivekananda with the 4 yogas of Sri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. I don't think there's any difference really. If there's any difference at all, it would be perhaps that 4 yogas are presented there as belonging to 4 different types of people. You choose one or the other. Swamiji wanted to integrate all of them. There was maybe a little more emphasis that way. Otherwise, I don't find any difference. In fact, all of the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, and of course Swamiji, nothing that he said was different, fit in beautifully with Bhagavad Gita. This is why many people in our monks of our order will say, these are the 2 things to hold on to, Bhagavad Gita and Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And in fact, there's a kind of humorous comment that was made by Swami Paramashanandaji. He said that, you know that there's a Bengali translation of Bhagavad Gita. They said, oh no, what is it? He said, the Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita. Yeah, he was so convinced that it was, that it agreed with it so nicely. So that's a very good questions. Thank you to everyone. A special thanks to Maharaj. It was so far been a wonderful retreat. Looking forward to tomorrow. Now we have an hour before Arati time. I'm sure that there's still some provision for tea and coffee if anybody wants to do that. Try to stay if you can. We're looking very much forward to the music concert tonight. Janavi, you want to hold up your hand? Janavi Pansalkar. That we've heard her sing before, and she sang last night, and she sings like an angel. So really try to be here. Really don't miss it. It's a wonderful opportunity. We're very grateful to her. And she comes as a devotee, not as a singer. Yes, by chance, she happens to be a highly accomplished singer, but first of all, a devotee. So we're very happy that she's agreed to come for this. So thank you all for coming. Please stay if you can. We'll have dinner for everyone who stays also after the concert. And tomorrow we begin at what time? Huh? 9:30. Those who want to come early, we have our meditation that we open the shrine at 5 o'clock. Yeah, open the shrine at 5 o'clock. There's a morning worship, 7:30 to 8:15. Breakfast, oh, this is an old one. Yeah, breakfast will actually start at 9 o'clock, and I changed it. It'll go from 9 till 10:30. Anyhow, you'll see outside. You'll see. So it won't be so rushed in the morning. I give you all things, yeah. Okay? Huh? What? It's not 9:30. No, because we changed it. So breakfast will be 8:30 to 9:30. Anyhow, you'll see it outside. Yeah, but we don't start at 9:30 tomorrow. Yeah, 9:30. We start at 9:30, but breakfast is pushed back. That's all, because worship. Yeah, so breakfast is 8:30 to 9:30. 9:30 will be the next session. So, okay. So thank you, everyone, and. If you can, otherwise, see you tomorrow.